in Kliptown. We come back to our people and to remember those that came before us as we reflect. I am here joined and led by a delegation that is led by the Deputy Secretary General of the ANC, Comrade Nomvula Mokonyane, next to me, well known to all of us. And next to Comrade Nomvula is Comrade Hope Papo, the provincial coordinator of the provincial task team of the ANC in Gauteng. Next to Comrade Hope is Comrade Dada Morero, the regional chairperson, is not here in his capacity as the mayor, the regional chairperson of the African National Congress in Greater Johannesburg region. He's also accompanied by the regional coordinator, Comrade Sasabona Manganye. And next to Comrade Sasa is a spokesperson of the ANC in this province, Comrade Mzi Khumalo, with whom we are going to be supporting one another in undertaking this job this afternoon. To my left, and of no lesser importance, I will start with the chaplaincy, abefundisi baka ANC, the spiritual leadership and pastoral care of the African National Congress, led by the National Chaplain, Comrade Molefe Tsile, Reverend Dr. Molefe Tsile, who is also accompanied by Comrade Nongaba Bosonkutu, one of our chaplains, long-standing chaplain, I think also much well known to you. We also are joined by one of the veterans of the African National Congress, who also has a lot to share about the history and the evolution of the African National Congress and the instructions from the Freedom Charter, known to you as well, Comrade Trevor Fowler. And we also have the coordinator, the regional coordinator from Eguruleni region, because this is not a Soweto briefing. It is a national briefing of the ANC consisting of the regions of the ANC in Gauteng. Without any waste of time, the Deputy Secretary General is a stronger voice than mine, so I'm sure you will hear her loud and clear. I'm certain that with media houses there's no problem, but I think it's important to also speak to our people. Over to you, Comrade DSG.
Thank you very much, Comrade Mahlengi. Good afternoon, members of the media, representatives of the African National Congress, the PEC of the PTT of Gauteng, the RTT of the city of Johannesburg, veterans of the ANC, the chaplaincy of the African National Congress represented here, comrades, volunteers of the ANC, Amandla, Ngawethu, long live the ANC, long live. Yes, I was doing sound testing. It does seem like it's working. Firstly, let me appreciate the fact that members of the media have come here to Kliptown as per the invitation of the African National Congress to be with us as we share with you our reflections on the work that has been done over the last 70 years, the struggles that have been waged by the people of South Africa, the achievements that have been made at the dawn of our democracy, but remind everybody that the Freedom Charter says these freedoms we shall fight for side by side until we retain our liberty. It then actually dispels the myth that the commitment of the Freedom Charter said in 2025 everything would have been done. The struggle continues. We gathered here today again on this particular day to indicate that we had intentionally wanted to celebrate this anniversary on its very day, but all of us, we know that today Parliament is sitting to pass the budget, and many of our leaders who are members of parliament and many other political parties and individuals are now in Cape Town to pass the Division of Revenue Act, and we wish Parliament all the best in ensuring that we take this process as another step to deepen democracy and build a better life for all. We're here to affirm a vision that inspired generations. The people of South Africa struggled for centuries to end an oppressive system, declared a crime against humanity. In the process of struggle, the ANC in 1923 adopted a Bill of Rights and the African Claims in 1943 prior to 1955. Both of these documents are also important contributors to the evolving rights-based and democratic vision of South Africa, including the focus on our country as a sovereign state within the broader community of nations. However, the Freedom Charter, adopted here at the Congress of the People on the 26th of June 1955, that captured the imagination of generations, informed the first constitution of a democratic and free South Africa, the foundations of governance during the first 3 decades of democracy, and the freedoms we continue to fight for side by side. The reasons for this does not merely lie in its revolutionary content and foresight. Its durability as a vision for the future is in how it was developed, with the involvement of thousands of people, peasants and intellectuals, men and women, rural and urban dwellers, workers and the petty bourgeois, and black and white. The movement through the Congress Alliance even made a call to the then racist white government to participate directly in the process towards the Freedom Charter, but of course, this was rejected. Rising to the occasion, it was the Federation of South African Women in 1954, and on the occasion also adopted the first Women's Charter. This charter then advocated for women's equality. The Freedom Charter was adopted by the ANC in its statement of principles in 1956, a year after the adoption of the Freedom Charter by the people of South Africa, united in their diversity. The ANC further went on to elaborate on its 1969 Morogoro National Consultative Conference, and the 1980 was declared the year of the Charter. The Charter went on to inspire generations of the youth, students, civic women, rural and religious trade union organizations, rallying behind its vision of a society of freedom and equality and the aspirations of each sector. This anniversary, the 70th anniversary of the Freedom Charter, takes place in the context of 31 years of democracy, when we committed in 1994 to use the transition to democracy as a beachhead to advance the vision of the Freedom Charter. The first critical task for our newfound democracy was the drafting of our constitution through a democratic constituent assembly, leading to its adoption in 1996. One of the members of the ANC Constitutional Committee, Comrade Bridget Mabandla, and one of our post-apartheid ministers of justice and constitutional development explains, and I quote, "The final constitution of 1996 embodies the Charter's ideals in law. Its preamble, founding provisions, and Bill of Rights translate the aspirations of Kliptown into enforceable rights and state obligations. Starting with the clause that says the people shall govern. 30 years later, we can proudly say South Africa has laid the foundations for a people's government that reflects the will of the people. Our constitution guarantees free and fair elections, freedom of association and speech, freedom of press and information. Of importance, we have the most respected independent electoral commission and ICASA that ensure that these rights are promoted and defended. We have, through various other laws and practices, sought to entrench and ensure that we protect participatory democracy. In our country, as we speak, all our communities are represented in expressing their will as to who must govern and who must lead. We run ward-based elections for local government. We have constituencies where people are elected, and most importantly, we have a government that is based on the will of the people. Even with this tactical setback, the ANC didn't rise to be arrogant. It invited everybody. Based on the 40%, we invited everybody to just ensure that there is political stability. We can proudly celebrate today that in our country, we've got community policing forums, we've got civic associations, we've got hospital boards, we've got CPFs, we've got various bodies that exercise oversight and accommodate people's participation in ensuring that there's accountability, oversight, and transparency in the governance of our country. The second clause speaks about all national groups shall have equal rights. The vision of the Charter of a South Africa that belongs to all emphasized, amongst other things, that our intention of building a non-racial, a non-sexist movement, we formalized it immediately after the banning of the ANC through our consultative conference in Morogoro, as well as through our conference in Kabwe in 1985. This inspired the work to build a non-racial youth movement, a women's movement, a student movement, trade unions and other movements as powerful antidote to the racist and sexist chauvinism apartheid. What we can also attest today on this particular clause is that no South African is treated or served by a government based on his race, his class, or her gender. All South Africans enjoy equal rights. Of course, we have to deal with the inequalities that are seen through the high levels of poverty, unemployment, and inequality. On the clause that all shall be equal before the law, we can proudly claim that strides have been made in ensuring that there is access to justice for all. There's building of more courts, there's inclusion of specialized courts, and also the provision of legal aid. Over the 3 decades of democracy, we have also made sure that unlike when we came into power, where we have a judiciary that was comprised of 165 judges, 160 of them being white males, 3 black men and 2 white women, that given that past where there was not a single black woman judge in 1994, today we can proudly say in the highest court of the land, we have a woman presiding over the Constitutional Court. We have also seen the transformation of the judiciary through the various courts being empowered, the various institutions being made accessible, and most importantly, that our struggles have always been about ensuring that no one is above the law, and most importantly, those who have to exercise the justice system and make sure that it is fair and it is accessible to everyone are not actually acting on the basis of race and on the basis of those who have the money and the means to defend themselves. The next clause on the land shall be shared amongst those who work it. We know that South Africa's colonial past is probably one of the most brutal and the one of the most violent across the entire European settlement and in Africa. Land dispossession was a violent encounter. We fought battles around issues of land as part of our struggle. Today, the preamble of the 1996 Constitution recognizes the imperative need to heal the wounds of the past through redress, while Section 25 of the Constitution provides a framework for land reform and food security. In terms of land restitution, we created the Commission on Restitution of Land to solicit, investigate, as well as attempt to resolve land claims. On the agrarian reform, the agricultural output has more than doubled, and exports grew 5 times between 1994 and 2024. Despite the adoption of technologies and machinery to improve productivity and efficiency, in the past 30 years, agricultural employment has remained stable at around 845,000 people, accounting for 6.3% of total employment. We do acknowledge that this is one of the areas that we need to intensify our work and ensure that we redress in terms of access to finances, access to skills, and most importantly, access to markets as well. The next clause that deals about equal human rights, that says all shall enjoy equal human rights. Our constitution and laws of a democratic South Africa guarantees basic rights such as the freedom of movement, the freedom of speech, the freedom to organize, the freedom to worship, and the freedom to travel. It further recognizes other forms of discrimination against persons with disability, the LGBTQI, and so on. The vicious powers of the police to invade homes, to detain without trial, to torture were also kept, and public safety policing was transformed. However, these are not the freedoms we can take for granted, and these are the freedoms that are not only dependent on government, but are the freedoms that are also dependent on us as a nation to work together, respect one another, and most importantly, to be part of ensuring that we eradicate the ills of our past and we also protect the most vulnerable, women and children in particular. The next clause on the Freedom Charter says there shall be work and security. Workers today have freedom to form trade unions, to collective bargaining, to employment benefits, including unemployment benefits, sick and maternity leave, the national minimum wage for vulnerable workers, skills development, not to be subjected to sexual harassment in the workplace. Our concern as the ANC is the fragmentation in the labor movement, which is a real challenge and a setback that is manifested in union duplication and sector and company levels. As Comrade Zingiswalosi, the president of COSATU, in her reflections on the Charter and workers' rights wrote, and I quote, "COSATU, as leader of the progressive trade union movement, is often challenged on what workers have achieved since the democratic breakthrough and through alliance. Under our progressive constitution and labor laws, workers have the right to unionize and collective bargaining, to be protected from unfair discrimination, and to equal pay for equal work, to work in a safe environment and receive financial support when on maternity or parental leave, when retrenched or dismissed, or injured, or in the event of death at work. Child labor has been criminalized. In 2019, the National Minimum Wage Act came into effect, raising the wages of 6 million farm, domestic, and construction, hospitality, security, transport, and other vulnerable workers. Yet, many workers struggle to exercise their hard-won labor rights, especially when facing a 43.1% of unemployment rate. Recent moves by our government to drastically expand the number of labor inspectors are a bold step towards ensuring the rights of all workers are respected. Employers who break the law must face consequences, close quote. That is the president of the Congress of South African Trade Union. Indeed, the aspirations of the Freedom Charter for work has been a challenge since 1994. Although the numbers of people in employment have increased from 8.3 million in 1996 to 17 million in the last quarter of 2024, the number of jobs have by far not kept pace with the growth of the population and labor force. Thus, with unemployment reaching crisis levels over the last decade at over 30% and more than 50% of young people, it fundamentally undermines the aspirations of the Freedom Charter and calls on all of us to work together in realizing what is in the National Jobs Plan and building an inclusive economic growth through industrialization. It is an issue that should be top of the agenda for the Government of National Unity, as well as the upcoming National Dialogue of the People of South Africa. On the clause that says the doors of learning and culture shall be open, we all know, fellow South Africans, that apartheid education was not just racist, unequal and patriarchal, but was part of deliberate underdevelopment of the majority, characterized grossly unequal spending per learner based on race and with high levels of adult illiteracy. Since 1994, the South African government, led by the ANC, has invested in basic education, with spending per learner more than 100% higher in real terms in 2016 than it was in the final apartheid years. This also meant that we moved from 13 racially based departments of education to a single system of education and training, built new and renovated schools across the country, equalized teachers' pays and benefits, introduced new national curriculum, a national school nutrition program, no-fee schools and scholar transport. By 2024, just a year ago, close to 100% of children up to the age of 15 years were in school. Around 12.5 million in 2024, with 62% of young people completing grade 12 in 2024. Over the last 10 years or so, first with the introduction of grade R, and now with the incorporation of early childhood development into basic education through the Bella Act, there are about 3 million children accessing learning. Curriculum reform has been ongoing. The department is now introducing a 3-stream model that seeks to provide diverse learning pathways to address the mismatch between skills taught in school and the skills required for our economy. There are, however, challenges, including infrastructure, mud schools, and teacher backlogs, slow introduction of mother tongue education and curriculum reforms, and the challenges of the post-school education and training center system with NSFAS. The struggle to open the doors of learning, therefore, remain relevant. SASCO has called for a student charter, which is an important initiative, building on the struggles of the Fees Must Fall movement. We all need to give them the necessary support and let them make a meaningful contribution as we go towards the national dialogue. On the doors of culture, many of the creative legends of our land, Miriam Makeba, Jonas Gwangwa, Tamim Nyelele, Tambuli, Huma Sikela, Gerald Sikoto, to name but a few amongst many, saw culture as a powerful instrument for liberation. The Freedom Charter did not separate cultural liberation from economic liberation. Rather, it seems to have understood them as interconnected. Despite insufficient resources for artists, for creatives and the art over the last 30 years, and a fast-changing industry that can be very exploitative we have seen a creative renaissance in South Africa. Our constitution recognizes the diversity of our languages with institutions such as Pan South African Language Board established. We now recognize 12 official languages, including the most recent South African Sign Language. We've also, through public broadcaster, the SABC, ensured that language is carried on television channels, as well as through 11 dedicated African language radio stations. On the next clause that says, the people shall share in the country's wealth, the most stubborn to address. Democratic South Africa inherited an apartheid and patriarchal economy. An economy in crisis with low GDP, high public debt, inequality, poverty and unemployment. To transform the economy, South Africa's development path over the 3 decades were characterized by the following: fiscal policy that promotes sustainability and intergenerational equity, inflation targeting monetary policy, a marketing determined exchange rate, regulation of the financial sector, redress through black economic empowerment and small business, as well as reforms to labor laws and strengthening competition policy. As a result of poor economic growth and high structural unemployment reaching 30% of this decade, per capita growth has also been stagnating. Programs to ensure economic inclusion like affirmative action, asset transfer, access to education and particularly free higher education for the poor, as well as broad-based black economic empowerment, has seen the growth of black middle class, which now represents over 50% of that strata. The tintswalos of this democracy. Other efforts led to the introduction of the Mineral and Petroleum Resource Development Act of 2002 and the Mining Charter of 2004. In keeping with the Freedom Charter's call that the mineral wealth beneath the soil shall be transferred to the ownership of the people as a whole, the MPRDA bestowed the mineral resources under the custodian of the state for the benefit of all South Africans. It is therefore encouraging that black ownership in South African mining industry increased from 2% in 2004. Black ownership in the South African mining industry has now grown to 30% in 2024, although a lot still needs to be done. Whereas coal mining is largely black-owned and managed, substantial black ownership is emerging in sectors such as manganese, gold and platinum group metals. Despite these advances, the deep legacy of inequality remains a persistent and defining challenge. It is for these reasons, fellow South Africans, comrades and friends, that in our 2024 manifesto, the ANC emphasized a national jobs plan and inclusive growth through industrialization and infrastructure development as central to ensure that the wealth of the land is genuinely shared amongst the people. The next clause deals with what is referred to as houses, security and comfort. The generation of 1955 recognized the deep wounds of poverty and underdevelopment inflicted by the apartheid system on the people. The clause calling for houses, security and comfort therefore finds expression in the foundations for the social wage laid over the last 30 years. Amongst the lead presidential programs announced by Comrade President Nelson Mandela in 1994 was the plan to build 1 million houses for the poor, expanded over the last 3 decades to encompass a comprehensive human settlement. By 2019, the South African government, led by the ANC, built 3.2 million houses, and in the 6th administration delivered a further 240,000 PNG houses, 231,000 service sites, 13,000 rental housing units, 26,000 households received funding through FLISP, and 623 informal settlements were upgraded. Unfortunately, with disasters such as fires and increasing floods, emergency housing has been now reprioritized so that then we do not leave anyone behind, especially those who are casualties of climate change. The program of building settlements by government has significantly slowed down over the last decade and therefore not able to keep pace with rapid urbanization and decreasing household size. In 2024, government reported that there were 3 million households registered in the national housing needs. Under apartheid, we dare forget, African women were regarded as legal minors, and marriage laws generally made it near impossible for women to own property without consent from or unless jointly with their spouses. Since 1994, deliberate programs are in place that ensure women's access to property. In 2016, 27.8% of women owned housing individually or jointly. Single women accounted for 30% of the property owners in 2019. And recent reports from the property market shows that increasingly women dominate the market in townships as new home buyers. Linked to the provision of housing, it has also been a program to ensure access to other basic services. In 2024, there was a record of progress in access to electricity, water, sanitation, refuse removal, and internet. The above also shows progress, but we dare not hide the immense challenges of basic services due to aging infrastructure, unplanned migration, illegal occupation of land, and many other unmandated plans of placing people in places that are not even vulnerable for human settlement. We have also invested in the social assistance program, where we have seen growth in the last 30 years, covering foster care grant, child support grant, care dependency, grants for old age and war veterans. In 2024, 73% of household members first consulted personnel at a public clinic or hospital, whilst 25% turned to private sector, whilst only 15% of individuals in South Africa are covered by medical aid. The implementation, therefore, of the NHI is important to ensure that distribution of resources between the public and private health sector are more equitable towards universal health coverage. On the clause that there shall be peace and friendship, the ANC, the leading and oldest liberation movement in South Africa, is renowned for its progressive and forward-looking political philosophy and ideals. From the date of its formation in 1912, the ANC has been a future-orientated, sophisticated conveyor of modern ideals on human rights, diversity, and international cooperation. Since 1994, South Africa has advocated for respect for the independence and integrity of all sovereign member states of the United Nations, the OAU, and now the African Union. South Africa has not attempted to invade any country, to overthrow any government, nor to wage war. We assert the independence of our democratic state. We have played leading roles in promoting peace and negotiated settlements in conflict-ridden countries. All these initiatives confirmed the continued importance of the Freedom Charter support for peace and friendship. We were there in Burundi, in the Democratic Republic of Congo, in Haiti, in Madagascar, in Northern Ireland, and closer to home in the Kingdom of Lesotho, as well as Timor-Leste, the Palestine and Sri Lanka. We have made efforts to secure regional and continent-wide cooperation. Through the OAU and its transformation into the AU, and through SADC, as well as through the development of key continental frameworks, the NEPAD program, Agenda 2063, and other frameworks, including the African Continental Free Trade Area. We have also advocated for progressive multilateralism. We continue to call for a more just and equitable global system. We have played an important role in structures of Global South, such as the Non-Aligned Movement, the G77, BRICS Plus, as well as the North-South forums such as the G20. And we are looking forward to hosting the world in the coming G20, the first to take place in the shores of our own continent, Mother Africa. These freedoms we shall fight for. The Freedom Charter remains an inspiration and a vision for South Africa we want in its political and social economic dimension. As we therefore celebrate and reflect on 70 years of the Freedom Charter, we recommit to fight side by side until we have won our liberties. Not until the 30 years. Until we have won our liberties, the struggle continues. We have a program to celebrate and reflect on the Freedom Charter from today up until the next January 8th anniversary of the ANC. The objectives of these celebrations borders on reflecting on programs and progress and challenges, working together with our municipalities, our provincial governments, and through the district development model and many other interventions in government, we seek to realize the objectives of the Freedom Charter. The objectives that we are also going to be focusing on is to mobilize grassroots participation. We will strengthen grassroots presence through local events, fostering community involvement and dialogue. We will encourage ANC branches to take ownership of celebrations, ensure that they reflect local realities and aspirations. We shall make our presence in every ward to be seen not by members of the ANC, but by the residents and communities where we live. The third area is to reinforce unity and solidarity. We are going to work harder to promote a sense of unity amongst ourselves, first members of the ANC and the Alliance, as well as amongst the people of South Africa, emphasizing collective responsibility in achieving the Freedom Charter's vision as we participate in the coming dialogue. Because also the gathering that happened here in 1955 is again a demonstration about our commitment to dialogue and a bottom-up process of listening and adhering to the will of the people. We will also reinforce solidarity by ensuring that our commitment to a progressive pan-Africanist internationalism as well as solidarity programs, we carry it side by side with the people of Palestine, with the people of Cuba, with the people of Western Sahara, with the people of Eswatini, with the people of Venezuela, and we will continue to emphasize that there is no nation or state that is above others, and hence the need to reform and strengthen the United Nations so that then it can assume the responsibility and fail and resist to be bullied by anyone who is perceived to be a superpower. We are all equal and we are all nation states that must be respected irrespective of our size, our wealth, and our domination that we have usurped through the exploitation of other developing nations. We shall work together in educating and inspire future generations. In all our engagements, young people will be put to the front to participate in the engagement and the discourse so that they can determine the future and the South Africa they want. We will first kick off this anniversary here on the 7th of July in Kliptown, where Comrade President Cyril Ramaphosa, accompanied by leaders of the ANC and the Alliance, will deliver a lecture that will also be linked to all our provinces and all our branches. It will be a platform to educate, a platform to learn, a platform to share with the people of South Africa and the world that not all has been lost, a lot has been done, the struggle continues. Working together with the Veterans League of the ANC, on the 28th of June 2025, we will host an intergenerational dialogue on the Freedom Charter. The PYA, as well as the Young Women's Desk and other youth formations, will participate in determining the future they want, as well as appreciating where we come from 1955 to date. We will also work together in ensuring that as we allow young people to participate, their views are also carried to what the National Dialogue has to look at, including young people, women and people with disability in the dialogue itself. Already yesterday, we participated in the colloquium 2 days ago with the Frederick Ebert Stifting on progressive multilateralism. On the 27th of June, the NC Gender and Equity Committee will also be hosting a national dialogue and exhibition on women in diplomacy and G20. In the next week, the ANC will launch the first in a series of e-books on 70 years of the Freedom Charter, reflections of the Charter, with contributions from historians such as our veteran Comrade Paulo Jordan, veterans such as Comrade James Ngulu, Comrade Bridget Mabandla, Rob Davies, Norman Levy, who were at the Congress of the People, as well as younger and middle generations. We welcome many contributions already received and encourage all South Africans and ANC members to continue to submit their reflections on the Freedom Charter today and in the future. The Freedom Charter will be linked to the various focus months of our nation, including of the founder of our democracy, Nelson Mandela, the August month, September Heritage Month, celebrating the legacy of President Tambo in October, together with Albertina Sisulu and others. In conclusion, we call on all South Africans to remember and take lessons from the generations of 1955 who had this foresight and vision that led to the drafting of the Freedom Charter. As we participate in the national dialogue, we must all vow to work tirelessly, sparing no effort, until we have won our complete liberty, politically, socially, culturally, and economically. The African National Congress doesn't shy away to accept that there has been challenges, but we are proud to say every clause of the Freedom Charter, we can account for the steps and interventions that we have made, working together with the people of South Africa, and that no government can claim to rule unless based on the will of the people. And that side by side, we shall continue to work with the people of South Africa until we have attained not only political freedom, but economic freedom as well. Thank you very much, Comrade Mahleng.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Comrade Deputy Secretary General. At this point, before we can ventilate these matters, and I hope she was very audible, before we do so, when our forebears are gathered here in Kliptown, the very same precinct, they started with a prayer and they invoked the spirit of ancestors, and they came here and said, Lizalise idinga lakho, Thixo Nkosi wenyaniso. Zonke inhlanga, zonke izizwe masivume usindiso. At this point, I'm going to ask the chaplaincy of the African National Congress. We can then have Sijule Ngengxoxo after that and deepen the conversation with members of the media. Thank you very much. No. No, proceed.
I just want to say to all of us, this is a prayer song. Yeah. When the ANC was formed in 1912, we prayed, we cried to God and said, and at the end it says, Launa wena Chico wena wetwa. No one else must rule but you, Lord. This is the song that was started by the African National Congress pastors when ANC was formed. It is profound to us as African National Congress. Over to you, Chaplain General.
A very comprehensive journey that the Deputy SG has taken us, traveling through before 1955, through Kliptown, 1994, and where we are today as we mark the 70th anniversary of the Freedom Charter. I want to start by recalling a verse in Proverbs 29, verse 18, where the word of God says, where there is no vision, the people perish. And it was through the visionary foresight of volunteers such as Pixley Isaka Seme, Dr. Moroka, Chief Albert Lutuli, Nelson Mandela, Walter Sisulu, Moses Kotane, Rusty Bernstein, Charlotte Makrege, Tatesemi Marx, that volunteers from across the villages, towns, everywhere in South Africa, provinces, gathered in this place where we are today. It must have been as wintry as it is today. And so we gather in this place of history. They gathered here from all walks of life, teachers, priests, workers, mine workers, farm workers, domestic workers. They gathered here for the purpose of developing a vision of South Africa they want. They came by foot, by trains, organized transport, they came in all forms of transport in order to be together here and say, let us consult together on the South Africa we want. And so we are humbled by the report we have just given that the journey continues, the struggle is not over, and there are many events, as we have been told, that are going to take stock of how far we've gone, of the achievements we've marked, but more importantly, how much more we still need to go. Let us bow our heads as we reflect briefly in silence, remembering the memory of the stalwarts, the volunteers who were not paid, to on their own left their homes in order to come together and share a dream of a South Africa that we are seeing evolving today in our new constitution. Heavenly Father, we thank you. We have been with our ancestors and foreparents, and you continue to be with us. Let this vision inspire your nation and future generations, that as we gather in this place in Kliptown, we do not forget, but really dedicate ourselves. Amen.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much to the National Chaplaincy. I hope this is working.
Yeah.
Are you able to hear me at the back? Okay, Siabong. With that, colleagues, and this is no ordinary media briefing, because we are also joined by the volunteers of the ANC around this table, as well as out there. But I'm now going to invite members of the media to far away. And I'm going to ask that, in the interest of time and also in the interest of taking everybody, giving them a chance to reflect and pose questions to the leadership of the African National Congress, can be able to do so. I will give an indication of who will respond to which particular question, and we will ask the Deputy Secretary General to round it off. But I would like to also allow for various perspectives from other leaders who are seated around the table. I'm waiting for hands. This is to members of the media. I know ANC members can be very creative. It's only to members of the media. Got SABC, got EWN, and News 24 in that particular order. Let's go. Do we have a mic for our media colleagues? Oh, okay. Please go ahead, Samke.
My question is directed to Mr. Trevor Fowler, the former city manager of Joburg and ANC. Mr. Fowler,
One of the
you are the city manager here in the city. Looking at the state of this city, comparing it to what the Freedom Charter says, and in particular this precinct that holds a very rich heritage and history to our struggle, it's a sad state of affairs. In fact, it's embarrassing. let me put it bluntly to you, it's embarrassing. What is your view on the state of the city of Johannesburg, particularly noting the years that you have left as the city manager of this once great global African city? To Nomvula Mokonyane, the Deputy Secretary General, as much as Johannesburg has been in the hands of other political parties, we are now in a coalition government. What is there that needs to be done in order to fix these metropolitan cities that are crumbling? You are fast becoming a ZANU-PF, where urban areas are no longer voting for the African National Congress, where the ideological and intellectual hub of the ANC in yesteryear in struggle was shaped in these urban cities. But today the intelligentsia is turning its back on you, hollowing out the intellectual and ideological base of the African National Congress. And then lastly, on the issues of the two clauses, which I give the ANC 4 out of 10, on the wealth question, that the people shall share in the country's wealth and that the land shall be shared in the people that work on it. What is the ANC so scared of in testing Section 25 of the Constitution, in expropriating prime land of this country that is currently in the hands of the white majority? Nisabane. Thank you.
It turns out that Samkele Masego has an audience here. Thank you very much, SABC. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Tabiso Koba from Eyewitness News. I think my question will also borrow from Samkele. We are at the Walter Sisulu Square, and we were here about a week ago before, obviously, before it was cleaned up. And this is not just a national heritage site, but it's a World UNESCO Heritage Site, and it is in a dilapidated state. So I just want to know what exactly happened here and why hasn't it been fixed? And I think to a certain extent, we are also in the Eastern Cape, where we are looking at monuments that relate to the Freedom Charter. There are also national heritage sites. You look at the house where Z.K. Matthews lived. It's also in a dilapidated state. You look at the grave sites of Chief Jali, also in a dilapidated state. Why has the democratic government done such a bad job at honoring the monuments and the legacy of its history, especially at keeping and at maintaining these monuments? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tabiso, News 24, Semtand.
Thank you so much, it's Matlengi. Semtanda Kapa from News 24. DSG, you mentioned that the Freedom Charter doesn't give off a deadline or a cut-off of 30 years. Can you tell us how much more time does the ANC need to realize the ideals in the Freedom Charter? And then could you please also reflect on the moment that the ANC finds itself? You are co-governing with the party. One of the party that you're co-governing with does not endorse the Freedom Charter. They believe in other avenues to realize the ideals. They've gone as far as going to court. Sis Matleng has said that it's attacking NHI and other things that come to my mind right now. But can you please just reflect on that, considering that we are here? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I am looking for another hand. Is it a number of questions, Muluku? Otherwise, I can always come back to you. Okay. All right. Yes, go ahead.
All right. No, thanks. My name is Muluku Mlot. Today is
from ENCA.
Correct. Today is a very significant day. There's no argument there. And we have seen the former president of the ANC choosing to release a statement. This is Mr. Jacob Zuma, and also to announce that he's taking the ANC to court to challenge his expulsion. And I'm juxtaposing today's events to 16 December 2023, when he chose the anniversary of the founding of the Umkhonto weSizwe to launch his party. When you analyze this events. What do you make out of this posture, this optics? But can you just confirm for us if indeed you will be challenging or opposing his litigation?
Okay, one of the many litigations. But let me, at this point, I would like to invite, first and foremost, we'll have the first round. This is the first round, we'll have the second round. I am going to invite the question that was directed to Comrade Trevor Fowler. I will ask Comrade Trevor to reflect on it together with the regional chairperson of the ANC, who also happens to be the executive mayor, in that particular order. And then we will deal with the other question. There's the question by ENCA. DSG, may I ask you to take that question? Yes. Yes, I think it needs an official of a national official to respond to that. I will speak to the other two questions, both from yourself, Tabiso Siamtanda, as well as questions from Samkel. Can we just start with this one about the city and the work that the ANC-led government is doing to restore instruments of our liberation heritage, alongside attending to the basic services that our people so desire. Correct, Trevor?
Thank you very much, Kendra. And good morning or good afternoon to members of the media. Let me answer the question from Samkel. Before 2016, we would regularly have meetings here with the management of Johannesburg, and also political meetings. I remember once there were 1,000 managers here. But I think there's a big change that happened after 2016. On the 22nd of September in 2016, there was an election of a mayor in Johannesburg. And that mayor was from a different party, was from the DA. And since then, there have been 9 mayors. If you count it back, and you say that the first mayor had two years until 2019, that means there were 8 mayors from 2019. Now, there is no organization that can function effectively when you have different mayors that come in with different ideas. And as a consequence, I can say that the staff of the city of Johannesburg used to call me and say that, look, we've got another mayor with another direction, what are we to do? And I think that is really the root cause of some of our problems. If you can look at what has happened in the city, you will see that now there has to be an effort to ensure that there's stability, to ensure that parties put the people first and ensure that there's service delivery. You will hear that parties go, they have votes of no confidence. Just yesterday, a vote of no confidence on the mayor. And that is what causes the result that is happening here, is instability. It is time that all parties work together, whether they're in the opposition, that they must also consider the residents around here, that they too will be affected by their actions. And I really would want to say that parties should work together for the people. Even if you're in opposition, there's something called a patriotic opposition. And that's what is required. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Comrade Trevor. I will ask the Chairman.
It's always, I think Trevor has answered it correctly, except to say we are now making plans to refurbish and restore the square. In the financial year now, we've put aside a budget which will start with the designs, appointment of consultants, and all that stuff. But that also includes the overall Kliptown development, not just the square. So that plan will then be unveiled. I think we've been engaging with communities in Kliptown so that we can unveil the plan to them. So last week Saturday we had one meeting on the other side. We're hoping to have the other meetings this side as we move along so that we can keep the community informed. But there's a commitment from the current government to deal with the development of Kliptown, including the square. Hopefully by next year's celebration, it will look proper. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the regional chairperson of the ANC in the Greater Johannesburg region. Then I would like to move on to the next question. I think, Tabiso, wouldn't you think that this, in particular, in respect of this particular square, that your question has been responded to, or you still feel you're fine? All right. So I'm trying to just do a quick reiteration for my benefit. Yeah. You can use your shop steward voice. Oh, yes. In regarding the how long should it be that the ideals, all the ideals of the Freedom Charter are realized? Just paraphrasing me. Okay. Yes. Please, Comrade Ho. Continue.
I think what is important is what was said by the DSG, that the struggle to transform South Africa is ongoing. Imagine in 1960, after the banning of the ANC, our leaders said, it's an end. Nothing is going to happen. So that generation helped us to also continue. Because remember, colonialism in South Africa started in 1488, when Bartholomew Dias arrived in South Africa, and the first son was killed in Mossel Bay. When they inquired about people on the shores, the first blood was spilled in 1488 in Mossel Bay. And then prison convicts arrived in 1652 on the dromedaries towards India to go and look for spices and business. That was the second part of colonialism. So by 1994, we had over 500 years of colonialism in South Africa, of a special type. And for 1948, apartheid. So every 5 years we make an assessment. But to expect that a legacy of over 500 years of colonialism and apartheid in South Africa can be eradicated in 30 years, I say it's correct to say that there has to be change. But the DSG has explained that we have started the transformation of South Africa of over 500 years of colonialism and apartheid. Dispossession of people in South Africa of their land, of their livestock, of their dignity, intergenerationally. So what has been reported, and DSG has actually summarized the account of the last 70 years. Freedom Charter is actually older than our democracy. We have 30 years and 40 years of the Freedom Charter. So I would say that as and when democratic elections happen, we need to take stock, as the DSG has done. And some of the things could have been avoided. But also imagine there are people who are resisting change. And the state cannot deal with those resistors through high-handed manner. It has to be through democracy and the constitution. In other countries, some of the things which are done in South Africa, people who have been arrested, they would have been charged for unpatriotic behavior. But in South Africa, you cannot do that. You have to go to court to challenge those who are resisting change in South Africa. And some of them are black, some of them are white. It's not only white people who are resisting change. There are also black people who are resisting change in South Africa. They are tribalists. They are sexists, because change is not about changing. There are people who want patriarchy to remain in South Africa, and therefore women to be disadvantaged. There are people who are tribalists, who are racists, who do not want a non-racial South Africa to happen. And therefore it's important that we also have, as the GSG has said, a mass national education about why we need a non-racial South Africa, why we need a non-sexist South Africa, why we need a non-patriarchal South Africa in South Africa, here in our country. So it's a duty of all patriots to engage in that national education. The dialogue also has to put those things high on the agenda. Dealing with unemployment, dealing with why we need a non-racial South Africa. And remember, in 1955, apartheid was very, very virulent in 1955. But we had visionary leaders who thought beyond the racists, who thought beyond the sexists, who thought beyond the tribalists, who thought beyond those who were unpatriotic in South Africa, and envisioned a country where black people and white people of South Africa will live as equal citizens of the country. You would have expected them to be vengeful, to say, when we take over, we're going to kill all them racists. But no country can be built on the basis of vengeance, vindictiveness. You can't build a country in that way. Hence, even last year, when the ANC got 40%, it said, let's work together to build our country, because the ANC always think about the country, not itself as an organization. And therefore, it becomes important that we journey with everybody in our country to build that non-racial South Africa, where black people's dignity is restored, where racists themselves begin to understand that they cannot be better people by thinking that black people are inferior. And therefore, the destiny of white people of South Africa is intricately linked to the survival and prosperity of African, colored, and Indian people of South Africa, who were victims of colonialism on racism in South Africa.
I'm going to ask you, Comrade Hope, I'm going to ask you to tackle the question about the clause in the Freedom Charter that refers to the wealth of the country, and to respond to SABC asking Lisaban.
I think the GSG explained the issue of the minerals. It's in the hands of the state. The issue is that how do you use that law to transform the mining industry of South Africa, so that we don't have people who abuse that law and communities not to benefit. For example, there's a social labor plan in South Africa that mining companies must ensure the prosperity of communities around mines. But there are people who go and divide those communities so that they fight among themselves and not focus on the implementation of social labor plan. And therefore it becomes the duty of the African National Congress, structures and the alliance and the trade union movement in those communities to ensure that the labor and social plans are implemented. Communities don't fight among themselves. Individuals don't want to benefit themselves instead of communities. In the economy, skill development is part of the transformation of the economy. Remember, before 1994, black people were prevented from being part of certain professions in South Africa. It's not just given that black people who are now who do aeronautical engineering fields, and all other science fields. It's because after 1994, there were deliberate programs put in place to ensure that women, people with disabilities, and black people begin to be part of those sectors, those professions. Organization of workers is also important to transform the economy. Because if workers are fractured, they are not organized, some of the people in the private sector will actually not implement the laws. The first people to ensure that the laws of transforming the economy are the workers themselves in the private sector and in the public sector. So the issue the DSG raised around unity of workers, it becomes important because they must be the friends of the court when some organizations, for example, challenge the Employment Equity Act. They challenge the Broad-Based Economic Employment Act. The workers must be the friends of the courts opposing that. Black professionals must be the friends of the courts when organizations challenge the transformation of the economy and the labor market. So as part of the 70th anniversary, the organization of black professionals become a very important issue so that they support the government when it transforms various sectors of the economy. It's not about Nisaban. You have to do everything in South Africa through the law. You cannot just wake up and implement laws which are in conflict with the Constitution. We're a constitutional state. And a constitutional state is important because it protects South Africans sometimes against ourselves. Human beings have got a tendency to become excessive. So we've put in measures in our country to protect individuals and collectives in South Africa so that you don't have a situation where somebody can become a dictator in South Africa because we come from a dictatorship, a racist dictatorship. So it's not put in Saban. We need to put in laws and implement those laws to ensure that we transform the economy. We are not a benevolent dictatorship in South Africa. We are a constitutional democracy. So whatever you do, you need to do in line with the Constitution. So the Expropriation Act, which has been implemented, the regulations around it is aimed at addressing land for the national interest to deal firstly with economic development. Because you can't take land and put mikuku on it. You have to build human settlements. You have to build factories on that land. You also need to have agriculture. So that amendment to the Expropriation Act, it's aimed mainly in those three, and that's a resolution of the ANC in 2017. Expropriate land for national interest, for public interest, for economic development, agricultural development, and human settlements. That's what the resolution of the ANC says in 2017. But you have to have an instrument. That's why we had to amend the Expropriation Act. You can also still use Section 25, as you were saying, to do that. Both must actually be used to actually do that. Section 25 of the Constitution and the Expropriation Act can be used interchangeably. But we must know that there are people who resist that. And therefore, you have to ensure that when you implement, it can be tied constitutionally to actually do that. So ANC is not about Nisabani. It's about ensuring that some people understand the direction the organization takes and support that direction. Because you can do things like a benevolent dictator and people don't understand what you're doing. But we are determined as the African National Congress to implement the Expropriation Act, to implement the NHI, and NHI is also going to take longer. It's not a 5-year program. It's not a 10-year program. It's a long-term program, as the minister and the ANC leadership has said. But the transformation of the economy requires organized workers, organized professionals, organized communities, and strong structures of the African National Congress and its alliance partners and the PYA. Because if the ANC is not strong, transformation will actually be disrupted and delayed by certain elements in South Africa who want the status quo of colonialism of a special type and apartheid to remain. And those people are also abusing our democracy to do that.
No, thank you very much, Comrade Hope. If we had time, I was going to ask him to unpack Section 25 of the Constitution, but I do want to ask members of the media to revisit the detail in the Constitution, and of course our structures to do so. At this point, I'm going to ask the DSG to deal with the remaining, the more difficult questions.
Thank you very much. I was looking for Samken. He must form his party and call it Nibasaban. You see, the first clause says the people shall govern. Secondly, we have the Constitution. Thirdly, we have pieces of legislation. Then we have regulations that regulate the environment and stuff. If the NC would not have done what Comrade Hope has explained here, again, it would have been us being perceived to undermine the will of the people. We made several attempts in Parliament, and the outcomes of Parliament were different. We finally have the amendment of the Land Act, and we do believe that it can then be put to good use so that we expropriate for public good, for transformation, and most importantly for inclusive growth. The next issue that has been raised, which I want to correct, it's not yet a World Heritage Site, this place. So, as you report, make sure that the headline doesn't talk about Kliptown being a World Heritage Site. In actual fact, it is our wish, and we are happy now that National is stepping in, that 70 years down the line, let all peace-loving people of the world appreciate that there is this place, and let South Africans who came to vandalize, remember also besides the 2016 setback of local government, we also had people who deliberately came here and stripped this place during the July unrest. So it is those things that we also need to remember. Today we are reminded that we have a former member of the ANC, and I wish that when you talk to us about the former member ENCA. The former member of the ANC who was expelled from the ANC, taking the ANC to court. Again, these are the freedoms. These are the freedoms. Because in any other democracy that is not based on the will of the people and the recognition of the courts and stuff, other people would have done something. The NC, of course, will go and defend our stance. We will do that for the good of the organization. And most importantly, we really want to be spared this thing that in every platform where we are, this former member becomes a subject. We're done with the former member. We're going to court to express our constitutional processes so that he himself can appreciate the will of the people of South Africa. The last thing that I also want to indicate is when all of us live here today, those who are in the present and those who are not in the present. 70 years ago, the very Walter Sisulu had to sneak out of his house and climb one of the properties outside to be here at the square. All because he was a freedom fighter. The freedoms that he has fought for are the very freedoms that allow you today to choose an independent, to choose a new party, to remain in the African National Congress. And yet, he was made not to make his choice of identifying with the ANC, because those years he would have actually been condemned as a terrorist. Secondly, as we live here, many of us, let us remember, the Freedom Charter is a document of the people of South Africa. The ANC adopted the Freedom Charter. And the ANC, together with the people of South Africa, the younger generation, we have the right to preserve the legacy of the Freedom Charter. And therefore we call on all peace-loving people of this country to make use of the national dialogue, to make use of the IDPs where you are called, to make use of your ward committee meetings when you are called, to make use of our constituency offices when you are called, to participate in the CPF, in the clinic committee, in the hospital boards, in the SGBs, because those are organs of people's power that entrench that very clause that says the people shall govern. Let us all celebrate that hard-won freedom of us participating on who to represent us, who do we actually send to Parliament, to our councils, because if we continue not to identify with those that were there when the Freedom Charter was adopted, you will then have this setback that happened in 2016. Those who came in abandoned this historical site because they thought it is the site of the African National Congress. I challenge all of us who can reach out to those who have been in the leadership of Johannesburg before the NC had come back. Go and ask them, what was the intention of collapsing this project, of collapsing this precinct? They are the last who can then remind us of what has happened to this place. Let's hold everybody accountable. The NC has embraced accountability. With our 40%, we invited even parties that were not interested to work with, but we did that for the good of South Africa, because South Africans gave us that percentage. Today we are voting for the Division of Revenue Act with everybody, and we wish parliamentarians can respect the will of the people, pass the budget, and make sure that we move forward. Amandla!
That sounded like a closing input. I thought I was still presiding over a press briefing, but thank you very much, DSG. I think I see Valeni Lapo. I just want, on behalf of the leadership of the African National Congress, and in addition to what the DSG has already said, to thank our volunteers all over the country, the ones that continue to hoist the flag of the African National Congress despite challenges that persist. In addition, I think just to reiterate, to remind abahlali base Soweto, izakhamuzi zase Soweto, the neighbors here, to join the ANC on the 12th of July, where the president will speak to the nation from the very same site where we are. We call on everyone to come and remember that the freedom that South Africa has was never free. And for us to remind ourselves, I think the DSG has said it all. With that, I believe we've come to the end of this briefing, and I'd like to thank you very much, members of the media, for braving the cold weather and the wind in Kliptown, which is always the case, by the way, every year. But thank you so much for indulging us and not doing this briefing at the ANC Lutuli House's Media Center. We are adjourned.
Somli.